Alright, so in this section 6.2, we are factoring what I refer to as easy trinomials. And please understand what I mean when I say the word easy, because I don't want you to feel bad if you feel like you have a hard time with these, because they're not easy, but they're easy relative to the other type of trinomial, because we're going to end up doing two types of trinomials, and these are the easier type, okay, because it basically requires less work to do these. The key characteristic of these trinomials and the way that you're going to tell them apart from the other type of trinomials is that these trinomials, which you see an example of right here, these types of trinomials don't have anything in front of the x squared, or in other words, their leading coefficient is 1. So you can write a 1 up there if you want to, but I typically don't leave the 1 there, so I'm going to erase it. But yeah, that's how you tell or spot what we refer to as an easy trinomial. Now the way that you factor these is you try to find what I'm also going to use a phrase here to describe this called numbers that work. And again, when I say that, I want you to know what I mean. So when I say the phrase numbers that work, I'm talking about two numbers that will multiply to the final number and add to the middle number. So when you find those numbers that work, and in this case those numbers are 7 and 2. Now think about that for a moment. 7 times 2 is 14, and 7 plus 2 is 9. So you notice that those are the two things that we're dealing with here. So those are referred to as the numbers that work. And when you find those numbers that work, what you do is you just plug them in like this: positive 7, positive 2, and since the letter that we're using here is x, we're sticking x there, positive 2, I'm sorry. And that's your answer. So that's how you do the so-called easy trinomials. You find those numbers that work and plug them into the parentheses, and you have your answer. So again, these aren't easy necessarily. It depends on how hard a time you have finding the numbers, and you also have to take into account and be careful with your signs. And for that reason, I'm going to show you a lot of examples of these, maybe more than you need. But there's some different scenarios that you could run into, especially with signs, and I just want you to be prepared for that. So number 2, we're going to do x squared minus 13x plus 40. Now the scenario here is that you have a positive on the end and a negative on the middle, excuse me. I think it's important for you to know beforehand what sign combination this implies, because when you find numbers here, the signs have to be correct. So when I have a positive 40, that means to get a positive 40, I could be dealing with a positive combination, but I could also be dealing with a negative combination. And I know that because this middle sign here is negative, that means I'm dealing with a negative combination. So you want to make that determination before you start looking for your numbers, okay? Now 40 could be -1, -40. Sorry, the pen's not working too well. -2, -20, -4, -10, and -5, -8. You can see the combination here that would work would be -5 and -8. And again, the reason that it would work is because those two numbers right there add up to -13, which means your answer would be x minus 5 and x minus 8. Okay, let's look at the next two. I'm going to go ahead and write both of these down. I think I skipped a number, number 3. Y squared minus 8y plus 7. And number 4, x squared minus 5x minus 6. On number 3, you'll be looking for a negative combination. So there's not a lot of choices here. -7 and -1 would have to be it, because those are the only two things that multiply to 7 in that combination. So your answer there would be y minus 7. And notice I'm using y this time instead of x. And y minus 1. Okay. Number 4, this last sign is negative. Now think about that for a moment. If you have a negative on the end, that means to get negative 6, you would have to multiply a positive times a negative. So you could do negative 1, 6, or you could do 1, negative 6. You could do negative 2, 3, or 2, negative 3. Now you want to find which one of these combinations here adds up to negative 5. And the answer to that would be this one right here, positive 1 and negative 6. So again, when you find the numbers that work, you're basically finished. You just end up having to write your answer down. And it would be x plus 1 times x minus 6. Okay? So again, be very careful with your signs, and maybe even writing down the combinations the way that I am over here is not a bad idea, even though sometimes I know you can do these in your head, especially with numbers that are not that big, but it's still not a bad idea with negatives and stuff to write things down like that. Okay, number 5, you have y squared minus 10y plus 21. The combination that would work here would be negative, negative, and it would be negative 7, negative 3. Okay, number 6, x squared plus 24x plus 80. The combination that you would use here is positive, positive, because it's positive throughout. So x plus and x plus. Now 80 is a little bit bigger number, as you know, obviously, right? So you may want to write those combinations down again. Just start with 1 and 80, 2 and 40. I probably did not give myself enough room to do this. Maybe, yeah, let's see. 3 won't work, and I know 3 won't work because if I went into my calculator and did 80 divided by 3, it would give me a decimal. You can try that if you want to. 4 and 20, 5 and 16, 6 and 7 won't work, 8 and 10. So those are all the combinations that multiply to 80, and you can see the one already that adds up to 24 would be 4 and 20. So we'll do x plus 4 and x plus 20, and that will be your result on that one. You want to have a good approach with dealing with numbers that are bigger, especially if that's something that you struggle with. Some people can do it in your head, other people struggle with it. So if you are one of those who struggles with bigger numbers like that, you need to have a strategy that's going to help you through a problem like that. Because sometimes the numbers are just big and you got to be able to handle that. Number 7, z squared minus 30z minus 64. This is another instance where the numbers are a little bit bigger. I want you to take a moment and try to find the numbers here that work and then get your answer. And we'll come back in just a minute and do this. So you looked at this, and again it's negative 64. Anytime the number on the end is negative, that means you've got a negative positive combination here. You could do negative 64 and 1, or 64 negative 1. You could do negative 32 and 2, 32, negative 2. You could keep going if you wanted to. But I guess when you run into the one that works, you use it, don't you? So use that one. That one adds up to negative 30. So we'll do z minus 32, and then we'll do z plus 2. And that'll work. Okay. Let's look now at a few more. Let's look at number 8. 8's going to look a little different. There's a 2-letter version of this that looks like this. It fits the same form. This is still considered to be an easy trinomial even though there's 2 letters in it. The difference here is put x in your parentheses and put y in there, and the 2 numbers that work, and again the way you do that is still the same. You find 2 things that multiply to 8 and add to 6, and you know that one's not that bad. 4 and 2 would work. And when you find those numbers that work, just stick them in front of the second letter. So plus 4 plus 2. So your answer, again, and I'm going to write it again just so it's maybe not so crowded. X plus 4y, x plus 2y. So you have some what we call easy trinomials that are the two-letter version. Not many of them, but if you see one on your homework, that's the way you're going to handle it. Next, looking at number 9, you see 3x squared plus 21x plus 36. Now I hope you're wondering about this one, because this one does not fit the same form as the others, and one of the very first things I said was that one of the main characteristics of an easy trinomial is the number in front is 1, and you can see quite clearly the number in front here is 3. Now this is still an easy trinomial, but it's one that has a GCF, okay? Now, I mentioned this in one of the other videos, but I mentioned it without emphasizing it much, and now it's time to emphasize it, that whenever you do a factoring problem, you have to look for a GCF first. Just look at the problem and see if you notice a GCF in it. And if you take a moment and look at this, you'll notice that there is a 3 GCF in this problem. So let's take a 3 out. And you'll notice when I take the 3 out, the trinomial goes back to fitting, I guess you could say, the form that we're used to, meaning you look right here, there's nothing in front. This goes back to, I guess, being called an easy trinomial. So the 3's still there, but now you can factor this the way we've been doing the others. Look for two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to 7. Plus 4 plus 3 would be the numbers that work. Stick x's there, and that would be your answer. So the difference here is this one has a GCF. Make sure you include the GCF as part of your answer right there. So let's look at 2 or 3 that are like that. Again, you take the GCF out first, and then you factor it the way we've been doing. So I'm going to give you 3 problems here, and then we'll come back and work them in a minute after you've had a moment to work them yourself. 4y squared minus 4y minus 8. Number 10, 4x cubed plus 12x squared minus 72x. And then number 11, sorry, the reason I'm pausing, y'all, is because I can't count. That should have been 10. That should have been 11. This should be 12. 12 is x to the 4th minus 3x cubed minus 10x squared. So again, do your thing where we pause it, work these 3 out, come back and check your answer. Okay, so on the first one here, your GCF is 4. Take a 4 out, and that'll leave you y squared minus y minus 2. You need two numbers that multiply -2, add to -1. There's a -1 right there. So numbers would be -2, +1. So 4 times y minus 2 times y plus 1 would be your result there. Number 11, your GCF is 4x, so we'll take a 4x out. That would leave you with x squared plus 3x minus 18. This time you want two numbers that multiply to -18, add to 3. That would be +6 and -3. So 4x, x plus 6, x minus 3. And finally, on the last one, your GCF is x squared. Take that out, it gives you with x squared minus 3x minus 10. And that would be x squared times x minus 5 times x plus 2. And that's all. So if you need to see more, if you have any questions, homework or quiz questions, let me know. Thanks.